Alright, hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about my favorite health books from 2022. This is going to be a brief video. I've got 12 picks here, not in any particular order. Let's get into it. The first book is Sit Less by Stefan Zavalin. Small book, but I thought it was great. It was just as long as it needed to be, and I sit for a living in this chair, in my computer chair, so this definitely matters a lot in my life, and I imagine a lot of people listening would do a lot better if they just sat down less. I really appreciated the way that Zavalin framed this, because exercise, like going to the gym and jogging, that is great, but in reality, a lot of us chronic sitters just need to sit less. We need to stand more, we need to walk more, we need to stretch more, and those basic changes can make all the difference. Now, I'm not spoiling this book. I think it's worth it even if you already understand the concept. It's definitely good to recommend to office workers and other people who sit. They might be overwhelmed by the idea that they have to go and get a gym membership and stuff, and again, it's not true. To improve their life, they need to sit less. Very simple book, but very important. I also appreciate that Zavalin sent me a signed copy, although he signed it to my wife instead of me, which was a little bit weird, but I still appreciate it. And I'm definitely looking forward to reading more from him. Next is The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. Lipton is known as one of the fathers of epigenetics, which is how our genes respond or turn on and off based on the environment, nutrition and stress, and so on, and belief. There are a lot of books about the placebo response and miracle healings and such, but I think The Biology of Belief, first of all, summed all that up very well and added a lot more to it. I was very impressed with this book, and I think those of us who are already on the alternative side of things would enjoy it most. I do doubt that it'll convince a lot of skeptics, but I know that these concepts, that activating your belief in your placebo response, I know that that's one of the most, if not the most important aspect to healing, especially in critical terminal cases. Meaning if you don't activate your belief in your placebo, you're probably not going to survive. Meanwhile, there are plenty of people who only operated under belief and placebo. They didn't do any actual therapies and they got better, miraculously better. So it's very worth knowing about, very good book, lots of detail, lots of length, not too long, almost a perfect book. Next is The Cholesterol Myths by Uffe Ravenscoff. Excellent book. I don't really have any other books that are all about cholesterol and dispelling the myth that cholesterol is bad for us. Cholesterol is an essential nutrient. It's so important that your body makes it. If you decrease the amount of cholesterol that you eat, your body will produce more. Cholesterol is part of numerous systems of the body, including the cell membrane, all the sex hormones, adrenal hormones, most of the way to the nervous system, and a lot more. It's excessively important. This book tells you all about it. It also tells you how the false theory of cholesterol and saturated fat are bad for you, how those theories gained hold, the contradictory evidence that has been there the whole time. Like if you thought scientific studies only showed that cholesterol is bad, that's absolutely incorrect. That was never the case. And obviously a lot of people are very concerned about this. Everybody's doctor tells you to lower your cholesterol, and there's a lot that we could say on it, but I've just been recommending this book. For people who want to understand cholesterol, you gotta read this book. For people who have been told that you gotta lower your cholesterol or go on a cholesterol lowering drug or diet, you gotta read this book. Anybody in the health business, you definitely have to read this book. This is mandatory reading in the health business, in my opinion. Lots of detail in there, perfect length, not too long, not too short. And to me, this is the book about cholesterol right now. Next is The Moth and the Iron Lung by Forrest Meredy, and this is all about polio, especially in America. Very well written, read like a proper cultural history or something like that. Definitely didn't seem like it was a conspiracy book of any kind. It was so tastefully done that it kind of snuck in the message of what it thinks really caused polio. Not going to spoil it for you, but those of you who are already into terrain theory, you've probably already heard some of this, just probably not as well done and as focused as in The Moth and the Iron Lung. A lot of terrain theory books, which are aiming to show that viruses don't cause diseases. They're aiming to show that environmental other factors cause these diseases. Usually those books cover a whole bunch of different diseases. So this one focusing on polio, I really appreciated it. I feel like I know a lot more about polio now. I feel like I got a very good picture of what actually happened, and I was so pleasantly surprised that it didn't read at all like an actual health book or conspiracy book. It read like a story, because it is a story. The story of polio. Of course, the so-called success of polio eradication has led to a century of domination of this theory of viruses causing diseases, and of course that we should respond to them with the needles, right? Well, this book does a great job of at least beginning to dismantle that theory, and for those people who are not into terrain theory already, I think this is an excellent starting point, and good enough for people who already understand the theory. Next is The Calcium Factor by Robert Barefoot. Not a huge book, but a great amount of detail. Calcium is excessively important, and I'm always craving for more details. This book gave me textbook style details while also a book style explanation of it, and I think it was a very good balance. I think it was simple enough for a layperson to understand, detailed enough for the researchers among us, and although I actually disagree with Barefoot's recommendation on how to get your calcium, I love the book. Very accessible, and I'll be recommending it for a long time. Next is Peace Over Pain by my friend and colleague Dr. Kevin Reese. I thought about giving this book an honorable mention instead of actually putting it on the list because he's my friend, but I don't care if I know the author, I'm going to give it an honest review. Peace Over Pain was quite good. Dr. Reese knows the secrets. He knows the deal. So he knows about the 90 essential nutrients, he knows about the bad foods. I don't have anything to disagree with him about, except he actually adds more to the conversation than I normally do. Because Dr. Reese, in addition to knowing the nutrition stuff, he's also a postural therapist, which is something we hardly ever get to talk about. Your posture matters. Nutrition will not fix your posture. If your posture is pinching a nerve or causing excess stress on some part of the body, that needs to be corrected with postural therapy. I think he presented the overall message very, very clearly. Not a huge book, not a pamphlet either, pretty perfect length. The book also gives you a lot of extra free resources where it directs you to his website and he's got free things for you there. For getting people started, it might be one of the best books I've ever seen, actually, to introduce somebody to alternative healing and nutrition. Dr. Reese is a kind and gentle soul, and he's the perfect type of person to communicate this. A lot of health people, including myself, are fairly rough around the edges, and I think Dr. Reese brings a very comforting voice for the masses. Next is The Truth About Contagion by Thomas Cohen, formerly named The Contagion Myth. They had to retitle it because this topic is a topic they don't want us talking about. The media, the politicians, mainstream society doesn't want us challenging the idea that viruses cause disease. Now, I did love this book, but I'm not sure if it's going to be the best book to convince a lay person. It's a very controversial topic. But I think Cohen presented it very tastefully. These types of kind of conspiracy health books have a tendency to talk down to the audience. Cohen was much better at talking to us. And although I thought it was very good, I do think it would be better for those who are already leaning towards terrain theory or who are already interested in terrain theory. I think it could have explained a lot of concepts more thoroughly if it were aiming to talk to people who are starting at scratch. So it's probably not best if you start from scratch reading this book first. I haven't seen an entry-level book in this subject yet that I've been happy with, but at the time that I reviewed this, it was the best terrain theory book I've read so far. In the last 3 years, a lot of you guys have given me a lot of recommendations on terrain theory books. I actually didn't know that there were that many of them out there. So the Contagion theory was definitely the best one so far in 2022, but I'm almost done this book, Virus Mania, and spoiler alert, this is now the best terrain theory book that I've read. I am going to put this on my mandatory reading list, and this is going to supersede The Truth About Contagion. And actually, this will supersede the next book that I'll talk about, which is AIDS Inc. by John Rappaport. Similar to the terrain theory thing, I didn't know how many books were out there about the AIDS hoax. Turns out there's quite a few of them. And so far, AIDS Inc. is my favorite book that's all about AIDS. But this Virus Mania book, it does go into AIDS. It has quite a lengthy AIDS section, and I think the AIDS section is really, really good. So this is going to be my starting point recommendation for anybody who asks about AIDS or the Spanish flu in 1918, of course the 2020 virus, SARS bird flu, mad cow disease, all kinds of things. I think this book does a better job at packaging it all for us. It is a long story, and it's a long book. It needs to be. It's one of the reasons I'm most happy with this book. Now, AIDS Inc. was also detailed enough, long enough, good enough to stand on its own as a book all about the AIDS hoax. I do recommend it. I liked Rappaport's writing as well, and it was definitely one of the best in 2022. Next is The Salt Fix by Dr. James D'Anico Lantonio. I had to practice that name, but I've been recommending this book all the time since I read it. Similar to the cholesterol myths, The Salt Fix is all about this one thing, why salt is so important, how the heck the medical industry got the idea that it was bad for us, how all the contradicting science during the time that the salt hypothesis was being formed, how all the contradicting evidence was cast aside, and so on and so on. Very interesting story, very, very important. Salt is one of the most important of the essential nutrients. If we get all the other essential nutrients and not enough salt, we die. So does every animal. All life requires salt. It's excessively important. It's also very interesting. There's also mountains of evidence that it does not cause high blood pressure, that the medical establishment has been barking up the wrong tree for 50 or more years. I've definitely never seen a more thorough packaging of this one topic, and it's such an important topic that it needs to be understood by the masses. This is something that people should read even if they're not into health. The average person should read this. Anybody who's been told by their doctor to restrict salt, they should read this and then fire their doctor, because the book will show you how little your medical doctor actually knows about how health works and how bodies work. A doctor that tells you to restrict your salt would kill their cow or kill their goat if they tried to apply the same advice to their animals. And unlike many health books, The Salt Fix was definitely written easy enough to understand by anybody. It didn't pander to us, didn't have a holier than thou feel. Really excellent. A+ for communication. Dr. D. Nico Lentino has also been killing it on Instagram and Twitter. Lots of people are waking up to the salt hoax because of him. A lot of respect for him, a lot of respect for this book. I'll be recommending this for years to come, for sure. Next is The Ion Effect by Fred Soyka. And actually, although this book was quite good, and I just read another book on ions recently, The Happiness Effect, The Positive Benefits of Negative Ions. The Ion Effect did it better, but this topic is so obscure, I'm having a hard time finding books on ions. So even though The Ion Effect was quite good, and I recommend it to lay people who know nothing about ions, I also recommend it to studiers who are interested in EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, because they probably don't know much about ions. And The Ion Effect gave us a very good overlay of the subject. But it was fairly short, and it was fairly old. It's about 70 years old, so I'm definitely looking for something newer and bigger that will replace The Ion Effect on my mandatory reading list. But for now, it's the best book on ions that I've read. I highly recommend it. Next, this was one of the best books of the year by far. It's called Warning: Psychiatry May Be Hazardous to Your Mental Health by William Glasser. Now, I thought this book was going to be all about just showing you how dangerous pharmaceutical head drugs are, and that's basically it. That's usually what I expect from this type of a book. But actually, I was so pleasantly surprised that not only does it denounce the standard pharmaceutical approach to mental health problems, and it actually kind of denounces the whole medical system, which I appreciate, but the book really actually spent most of its time on teaching you how to not be unhappy, which is a different concept from being happy. Getting rid of the things that make us unhappy might be all it takes to live a satisfied life. I'm not sure, but I think this book gives a lot to think about, gave me a lot to think about. Definitely anybody who's actually in therapy or under the care of a psychologist, I highly, highly recommend this book. Drugs are not the answer, obviously, but rather than just telling you drugs are not the answer, the book actually gives you some decent answers to start with. They might actually change your mental health. Fantastic book. I'm definitely looking forward to reading more from him as well. Okay, one honorable mention before the final best health book of the year. My book, Everything You Should Know About Healthy Blood Sugar. Simple strategies to conquer almost any health problem. I released this in 2022. I'm told that it's my best book yet, and I actually agree. I worked very hard on this, but I think I actually might have made a mistake by making it all about blood sugar, because people think it's all about blood sugar. Blood sugar is just one of the more important things in overall health, and my idea was so many people are struggling with blood sugar that if they actually use this system, they should also be able to reverse osteoporosis and blood pressure problems and get their weight under control and basically any health problem that is out there. Because the health problems that we deal with primarily in the health business are nutritional deficiencies, bad food habits. I tried to go into all this, explaining our bad food list, explaining how primitive people actually got their 90 essential nutrients in their food. What did they do? Went into great length on digestion and dehydration and other simple strategies that anybody can use, not only to get their blood sugar under control, also hopefully conquer every other health problem. So I could have easily called this Everything You Should Know About Arthritis, or Everything You Should Know About Digestion. Basically, it's a distillation of the message that we already give, but in more detail and more specifically about blood sugar and metabolic problems. You can see all of my books on noticebooks.org, and you can see the free versions. I always have a free version of all my books, audio and video. Okay, last great health book of the year is The Secret Language of Doctors. I already gave this book a great review in the December video. I've always said that in the alternative health business, if people knew more about how mainstream medicine worked, they probably would choose not to use it as often as possible. So The Secret Language of Doctors gives us great insights into how doctors actually think and operate. And in my opinion, unless you've been shot with a bullet or hit by a bus or you have a life-threatening infection, you don't want to go to a standard medical doctor. If you do have to go to a standard medical doctor, you definitely want to understand what they're saying about you. They could say things right in front of you and you not understand them because they have a secret language. If you understand what they're saying, you might want to move yourself or your friend or your family to another hospital. Maybe. And what they say to each other might contradict what they say to you. I think you really ought to be in the know, so I definitely recommend this book. Okay guys, those are all the best health books of 2022. I've reviewed all of these books on my Instagram and on my website if you'd like to see some more. I read a lot of health books, so obviously subscribe here, follow me on Instagram. Many more health books to come. Definitely watch this video next, which is all the worst books of 2022. The rough year for bad books. Let me know in the comments any other books you'd like me to review, and what you think of these books if you've read them. I appreciate if you like and share these videos with other readers and people into health. And that's all I've got for today. I appreciate you. Until next time.